Syria while he was commander-in-chief. Let's talk about all that right now. House Foreign Affairs Committee member Congressman Adam Kinzinger from his home district in Illinois. And, sir, thank you for your time and welcome back here to America's Newsroom. Syria denies it. What do you think? How do you believe anything?
Well, look, if I have to pick between the U.S. State Department or the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad, who claims it was the rebels that used chemical weapons, who claims he's just trying to push back ISIS, who claims he's not using guided weapons against hospitals, which he is, I'm going to go with our State Department. I think it's quite obvious this is a crematorium. Look, we know from a guy named Caesar who escaped Syria. He was a regime guy, and he basically took a bunch of pictures of all the tortures that were occurring, all the murders that were occurring, and brought him out and put him before my committee in Congress. We know that this regime basically does what the Nazis did on a bit of a different scale. And so this is a very serious situation, and I think one that has to be rectified, or it's going to be the shame of our past.
Suggested that the snow melt on the top of that building suggests it was a crematorium. Is that good enough to make that claim?
Well, I trust our intelligence assets a lot. I think when you look at all the information they have, we have very great satellite coverage, we have everything else, and it's by a prison. We know that they're murdering people there. We know that for a fact from people that have escaped, from things that we've seen, from pictures that we've seen. This is what they're doing. And so, you know, to take Bashar al-Assad at his word in any of this, and if anybody does that, I would encourage you to look at the claims he has made in the past, including that he's never used chemical weapons. He is untrustworthy, just like the Russians and just like the Iranians who are backing his regime.
Fair point there. Barack Obama made a comment about a week ago. He was doing an interview. Comments that were published yesterday and Monday. In part, he explained his rationale for not bombing Assad or going into to Syria's president. On screen now. I actually think that the issue that required the most political courage was the decision not to bomb Syria after the chemical weapons use had been publicized, and rather to negotiate them removing chemical weapons from Syria. There's more in that interview, but just on its surface, what do you make of that when you consider the tomahawks that were launched at 4:30 in the morning on an empty airstrip, essentially? Go.
It sounds like a left-wing Berkeley professor, you know, at a peace rally. I mean, the reality is, when I was supportive of strikes in 2013, a lot of people said this is going to start World War III. And the thing I said, look, the Russians, especially later when they got involved, there's not a thing they can do. And doing this will reclaim America's role in the Middle East and will push back against Assad. President Trump did that. I was very proud of that move, destroyed a field, and there's not a darn thing that the Syrians or the Russians can do about it. And so for President Obama to say he made the politically courageous move is laughable, because nobody on the left, right, or center would agree with him. He's on an island on this issue.
Well, the other thing he said is that 99% of the chemical weapons stockpile were removed.
Well,
can we say that's the case, or do we think that Assad made more after some were taken out on behalf of the Russians? What do we think about that?
Well, we took the Russians' word that all these chemical weapons were destroyed. John Kerry came out and celebrated the destruction of all these chemical weapons because the Russians said so. Then we find out that actually the Assad regime used them, not to mention chlorine gas, which may not technically be banned but falls under the spirit of the law. And there's even questions about whether the Russians knew. They may have known prior to this attack. So we're basing this on the Russians' word. There is no doubt Assad held back some chemical weapons and probably has plenty more.
He made these remarks in an interview before receiving the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award a week ago. There's more in that article, and if you want to check it out, it'll be online. Sir, thank you for your time. Adam Kinzinger in Illinois. See you in Washington real soon.